What if I told you that our pursuit of a better world is actually leading us astray? Our politicians promise policies that will create jobs, higher incomes, greater prosperity. Business leaders and innovators paint visions of self driving cars, AI assistants, and tech breakthroughs that'll transform our lives. Everyone seems to agree that if we just get a little bit richer, if we innovate just a little bit more, if we just have more choices and conveniences, we'll be happier. That's the story we've been told about progress. That's the future we're all working towards, right? But here's the thing. In the 1970s, an economist named Richard Easterlin noticed something strange. He was studying different countries, expecting to find that as nations got richer, their people got happier. It made sense, right? More money, more choices means better lives, right? But what he found actually shocked everyone. Yes, when poor people, very poor people, get enough money to meet their basic needs, they became happier. But after that, nothing. Zero. Countries could double, triple their wealth, but their citizens weren't any happier. Now think about that for a second. We're all chasing this future of endless tech growth, material abundance, but we're also working longer hours, buying bigger houses, getting the latest gadgets, and yet we're not getting any happier. In fact, studies show that we're more anxious, more depressed, and more disconnected than ever. Maybe you've been thinking about a better future, a utopia, all wrong. Now, I've always been an idealist. Growing up, I believed deeply that we could change the world. At first, I looked at the hackers and countercultural revolutionaries the tech world represented. A group of programmers in a garage could change everything, they said. They sold us a vision of a better future. One click, one app, one platform at a time. But then I watched those same companies become what they once fought against. The revolutionaries became the empire. Their promise of a better future never came to pass. Instead, we got addictive algorithms, surveillance capitalism, and digital disconnection masked as connection. And so I turned to political leaders. Surely those who spoke of hope and change and greatness could deliver us to a better world. But as the years passed, life didn't change much. In many ways, things got worse. I felt myself becoming cynical, jaded. Maybe nothing could really change. I no longer wait for some revolutionary to change things for us. I've learned that no political leader, no technological breakthrough alone can fix our world. It has to be us. It has to be you and me. Now, for decades, we've been told technology will save us, yet with each passing year, despite more gadgets and apps, we seem to drift further away from the future we dreamed of. Now, I've made videos about this before, the empty promise of technology as our savior. So, what is utopia really? Is it just a better city with flying cars or self-driving cars, robots? I think it's a society where people are happy, free, peaceful, connected, and we mistakenly believe that these qualities come from consuming more, earning more, accumulating more. And the Easterling paradox shows us that's just not the case. And so I started to look in different places, asking different questions. If no government policy, political leader, or tech breakthrough could save us, what could? The answer, it turns out, might have been demonstrated by a 16-year-old in a tiny Himalayan kingdom. In 1972, a young king made an extraordinary decision. Bhutan's king, Jigme Singye Wangchuk, was just 16 years old when he ascended to the throne. Around him, he saw neighboring countries rushing to modernize, pursuing rapid economic growth at any cost. India was cutting down forests for factories, Nepal was pushing tourism without any limits, and everywhere, traditional cultures were being eroded in the name of development. But the young king had a realization. His father had always told him that a king's duty, his dharma, was to ensure the happiness of his people, not just their wealth. Now, looking at this small Himalayan kingdom, with its own ancient traditions and dharmic traditions and close knit communities, he saw something worth preserving. But he also knew his people needed development. They needed schools, hospitals, roads. The question was how to progress without losing your soul. That's when he declared that Bhutan would pursue gross national happiness instead of gross domestic product. Now, people thought he was naive, idealistic, but he understood something profound, that real progress should be measured by the well being of people and the health of their communities, not just the size of their bank accounts. Now, this wasn't just a philosophy. Bhutan created detailed metrics for measuring happiness, considering everything from cultural preservation to psychological well being. Every policy had to pass a happiness impact assessment, and they rejected joining the World Trade Organization to protect their traditional farmers. They mandated that 60% of their land must remain forested. They limited tourism to preserve their culture. The result is a country that's carbon negative, with high life satisfaction and strong community bonds. Similarly, in another part of the world, when Nelson Mandela walked out of prison in 1990, South Africa was at a crossroads. The world expected, maybe even waited for revenge, retribution. Instead, Mandela turned to an ancient African philosophy called Ubuntu. I am because we are. It's a radical idea. My humanity is tied up in yours. I can be well if you're not. What followed was extraordinary. Instead of trials and punishment, South Africa created the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Victims and perpetrators sat together in circles, following the Ubuntu way of healing through understanding and shared humanity. The results defied expectations. Communities began to heal. Revenge, violence plummeted, and a new kind of justice emerged. And this wasn't just a feel-good philosophy. When schools in South Africa adopted this Ubuntu principle, bullying dropped by 75%. How? Because instead of just punishing bullies, schools created circles where children could share their stories, understand each other's pains, and learn to see their classmates' humanity. In the justice system, offenders who went through the Ubuntu based programs were 67% less likely to commit crimes again compared to traditional punishment. But here's where it gets really interesting. In 1977, a group of researchers wondered, could creating pockets of peace and harmony actually ripple out to affect entire cities? It sounds impossible, right? But they tried something remarkable in Washington, D.C. They gathered a group of people to meditate together, focused on peace and harmony. Just that, nothing else. And when they looked at the crime statistics afterwards, they couldn't believe what they saw. During the experiment, violent crime dropped significantly. They thought it might be a coincidence, so they tried again and again. In city after city, Washington, New Delhi, Liverpool, wherever groups came together to create these fields of peace, crime rates fell, accidents decreased, hospital admissions went down. In Fairfield, Iowa, a small farming town, thousands of people have been meditating together daily since the 1980s. They're not trying to change the world, they're just sitting quietly together. But studies show that this town's crime rates are far below similar towns. Their businesses do better, their schools perform higher, even their healthcare costs are lower. This isn't magic. Scientists call this the field effect of consciousness. Like ripples in a pond, when a group of people create peace within themselves, that peace seems to ripple out into their community, into their city. In 1973, about the same time Bhutan's young king was rethinking progress, a rock climber named Iwan Shonad was wrestling with a similar question in California. His company, Patagonia, was growing fast-selling climbing gear, but he'd seen firsthand how traditional businesses' growth destroyed everything in the wilderness that he loved. One day he was climbing in Scotland, and he had an epiphany. He saw how the old style climbing equipment was damaging rock faces. Now, instead of just making money selling what climbers wanted, he decided to make what the planet needed. It was a radical idea, a company that existed not to maximize profits, but to solve problems. Now, people said it would fail. Instead, Patagonia thrived. They started making clothes from recycled materials, becoming one of the first companies to offer on-site childcare, and even ran ads telling people, don't buy this jacket, encouraging customers to repair their old gear instead. Now in 2022, he went even further, and he gave away the entire $3 billion company to fight climate change. Earth is now our only shareholder, he declared. Now here's what's fascinating about Patagonia's story. It challenges one of our deepest assumptions, that doing good and doing well are somehow opposed. That to succeed in business, you have to compromise your values. That idealism is naive. But Patagonia proved something different. By choosing to solve problems instead of just chasing profits, they just didn't survive, they thrived. Yes, they're an outlier in the industry that mostly chooses differently. Yes, there's enormous pressure to follow the conventional path of endless growth at any cost. But maybe that's exactly why their story matters. It shows us that another way is possible. That the harder path, the one of doing what's right, is actually much easier. It can actually work. In fact, it's easier because when you choose to do the right thing, you have a lot less competition. Now, this isn't just about a single company. It's about all of us and the choices we make. They all have a ripple effect. They all affect the field of consciousness. And here's the beautiful irony. The future we've been chasing, one of happiness, peace, fulfillment, isn't waiting for us in some high-tech tomorrow. It's available right now, but it requires something from us. The courage to question the story we've been told about what makes a good life. Maybe it starts with small acts of resistance, choosing connection over consumption, taking time for stillness in a world that demands constant motion, looking at our phones a bit less and at each other's eyes more. Or maybe it's about bigger choices. Rejecting the pressure to measure our worth by our wealth, building communities that value harmony over hustle, creating spaces where people can truly see and hear each other. The evidence is clear, from meditation rooms in Iowa to village circles in Africa, from a kingdom in the Himalayas to a company in California. Another way is possible. We can choose to build our personal utopias not through endless accumulation, but through conscious living, through an elevation of our consciousness. And as we do, like ripples in a pond, these individual choices create waves of change in our community. The real question isn't when we'll reach this utopia. It's whether we're brave enough to create it right now, right here, within ourselves and with each other.